Welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast with your host, Emmett Muckles. Please visit iTunes, Stitcher, or emmettmuckles.com to listen to all the episodes for free.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast. This is Emmett Muckles. You can find it on emmettmuckles.com. You can also find it on the Billionaire Lifestyle LLC. So go there, do it now, lock it in, and your life will be fruitful. Today, my guest is Peter Pactor. And Peter has written a book, and a very interesting book. The title is Daniel, the Age of Discovery. So welcome, Peter. How's your day going?
It's going well today. It's amazing. Most of my days go well.
I mean, every day you can get out of bed, it's a good day.
Most of the time, yes.
Yeah. There are some days where you're like, maybe I should have just stayed in bed. But I'm going to tell you how immediately I was struck. And let me preface this by saying that I found your bio and your information on Radio Guest List, which is a service that provides people like me with people like you for interviews and interesting conversation. But one of the things that just struck me to my core because it resonates so well with the billionaire lifestyle is you are in control of your own life. Basically, you manifest your own destiny. It said so many things to me that I immediately called you. And, when I called you, I apologize for calling so late. But you have written so many books. Give us a little story about yourself, because you were a teacher in the school systems in Texas, correct?
Well, in a private school.
Private school. Is this one of those $100,000 a year schools?
No, this is I've been some of those, but this one was a parochial school, and it wasn't as expensive as most private schools are. But it was a pretty good school. I had a good time there. That's where I spent the last 16 years of my teaching career. And as I told you earlier, that was my 50th year teaching. I just retired in May, and although I enjoyed teaching, it was like getting paid for doing something you would do for nothing if all things were equal. I just couldn't do it anymore. And so I retired, but I still had things I wanted to teach. And I decided that I would write a book, actually books now, in which I would teach some of those lessons that I thought were important.
So what are some of the important lessons that you feel young adults need to grasp, particularly nowadays? And this is not really just for young adults, because there are some adults who miss some lessons that are necessary for our lives to progress.
Well, I will say this, Emmett, that I really didn't have all these lessons in my repertoire when I first started out as an adult. I had to learn these things over the years, and it took a while. And I thought sometimes if my parents knew these things and they taught them to me, they didn't teach them to me in such a way so that I retained them. Although I did retain a lot from my parents, I think the most important lesson that I teach in my book, and for the last 15 or 20 years, I've taught as my first lesson in all my classes, was I am responsible for my life. And this means that, well, let's say it doesn't mean that you can do whatever you want. It means that you make good decisions, you get good consequences. You make bad decisions, you get bad consequences. And I spent the first day of every class discussing what this meant. For example, if you're a lawyer and you don't file your briefs on time, you're likely to be sued and perhaps lose your license because it's a bad decision. If you're a kid and you've done all your off-season training and go to play sports, you have a much better chance of getting more playing time than if you go out of shape for the first practice.
Yeah.
And they're just idea of making good decisions. And sometimes the kids would ask me, well, things happen to you that really aren't the result of your decision. I said to them that that's true. There are things that happen to us that are not a result of our decision, but we still have control because we control the way we respond to it. And that's really important. It's the only thing we have 100% control of, our attitude. And so if your attitude is right and you look at these things correctly, you can make good decisions and come through them pretty well.
So do you believe that there is something missing in that lesson today in our society right now? Because, we live in such an immediate gratification society. And one thing we talked about when I initially called you, and you said this, and I've been thinking about it for the last 24 hours, is that we have so many choices that it affects our being nowadays. Do you think, how that...
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
How do you think that comes into fold in our modern society?
I think that our kids and our young adults are not grounded in anything. When I'm older than you, as you know, I'm 73. And when I was going to school back in the 50s, what my parents told me, our houses of worship told me, the schools told me, the movies told me, the music, the rock and roll music told me, it was all united. Every place you went, you got the same message. But now, because of electronics, the kids are bombarded with different contradicting statements about what they should do and what they shouldn't do. And so they have really nothing to hold on to. And parents try very hard to work with this, but they're fighting a battle by themselves because they're getting different messages, even from the schools. For example, kids think that they go to school for grades. They have to have the grades to get into college of their choice. And they'll do whatever they want. I'm sorry to say this, too many of them, it's not universally true. They'll do whatever they need to do to get the grades, whether it's cheating or working hard or a combination of both. As I told you yesterday, I had an incident in school where two kids they were sequential in class standing. They weren't 1 and 2, but they might have been 7 and 8, and they both applied to Rice. And the one with the higher class standing got in, and the one right below him didn't get in. And the kids went to the head of the upper school, and they said, "This isn't fair. This kid cheated all the way through school." And the head of the upper school said, "Well, we didn't know about it, and you did. And there's nothing we can do now at the end of the senior year." And that's what happened. The kids didn't want to snitch on the guy, but because they didn't take a proactive stance on the cheating, their friend didn't get into Rice where he wanted to go to school.
But, today in our society, there is, and you will hear it particularly if you go online at any amount of time, you will hear this culture where snitching is supposed to be a bad thing. But conversely, you can disprove that. All you have to do is watch this television show called The First 48 Hours, where they're trying to solve a crime. Everyone snitches on everyone else. But our society seems to have made, we don't put the value on the virtue of paying your dues anymore and hard work because of the instant gratification. When you said that, when you were coming of age, that all the messages were very clear, succinct, and concise with each other. Can you give me a few details of that? Like you said, I'm younger than you. In the 50s, I wasn't even thought of.
oh my gosh. I mean, how am I going to put this? This is the first time someone's asked me this question. Well, we knew that cheating was wrong, and we wouldn't do it. That's one thing. The message was very clear. You wouldn't do it. You treated people with respect, even if you disagreed with them. You always respected the other person. Not always. I'm speaking in general right now, but idea is that you showed respect to the other person. You wouldn't let someone, for example, rob your neighbor's house without calling the police. You think that's pretty normal, but in my discussion on cheating last spring with the kids, I asked them what they would do if they saw someone carrying property out of the neighbor's house and they knew the neighbors weren't there and they had never seen those people before. They said, well, I'd call the police. The first one told me that, and the second one said, nothing. It's none of my business. And that's kind of disturbing. It was very disturbing to me. And there's a very good movie out I'd recommend if people haven't seen it. It's The Emperor's Club, starring Kevin Kline and Emil Hirsch. And it's just cheating all the way through the movie. And when I had a cheating incident last year, and I was kind of upset by my discussion with the kids about it. And so we watched the movie, and every time a cheating incident appeared, we talked about it. And I don't think anyone had ever spoken to the kids about the harm that the cheating does. And when we were through, their attitude about cheating had changed a lot. And I think that's important. But as you said before, we have become narcissistic, that people nowadays think that when they get out of college with a bachelor's degree, that they should automatically be vice president of a large corporation like IBM. They should have it. You and I know that doesn't work.
Yeah, that's true.
Unless it's nepotism, but it happens, and in every industry. I see it with young teachers, and it's something they have to overcome. The narcissism is going much longer into adulthood, maybe 35, 40 years old.
So do you think...
It needs to be over by the time you're 20 at the latest.
So do you think that because we are a non-homogeneous society, because I get to travel to Europe and I don't see some of the things that I see manifesting, in culture in those other countries as I do here. Do you think it's because we're so different that everybody's vying for their place, and the only way they can really do it is with a certain amount of bravado?
Well, I don't know if that's the case or not. I think in this country's history, we've always been a non-homogeneous society. Back about the late 1800s, 1880s, yes, in that range, we printed our documents in English and German because the German immigrants society was so big, just like we do now for Spanish and Spanish community, Spanish and English. So, but we seem to absorb people, and they seem to fall into being Americans. This is a pretty nice place to live, and we've got a lot. And for many people today, I think what they have comes too easy. When I was a kid, my parents lived through the Great Depression, so they had a different attitude about money and the way you lived your life. And for me, my book starts in 1928, and I plan to go through World War II in the series. But in this period of about 20 years, I think is one of the greatest periods in the history of this country. Not because we had a lot, it's because we didn't have a lot, and everyone was in the same boat pretty much. People who had millions of dollars, like William Durant, who founded General Motors and lost everything, and when the stock market crashed, and he was 68 at the time, they just went from riches to poverty, but everyone was in the same boat, and they helped each other out. And so I think that's pretty good. We were much more cognizant of other people's needs, I think. And we don't always do things right in this country, but the really great thing about Americans is that even though we don't do it right all the time, we eventually make it right.
Yeah. And
Americans are really great people. They do what they can to make things better, and when they see an injustice, they try to fix it. It doesn't always work. when I went to college in 1961, we had, there wasn't much in black and white relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my closest friend in college was black. Now, people didn't have black and white friends in the 1960s. I don't think that it was very common. When I went to my college, none of the fraternities took blacks. We had Asians, but I don't think we had any Hispanics on campus then, and they didn't. And only 2 fraternities took Jewish kids. So there's a lot of that still on. But my sophomore year, when my fraternity rejoined the campus, it's been off for about 30 years. We took everybody, and it was really good. And I'm glad to say that I had black fraternity brothers with whom I was very close, and it was unusual. I mean, you watched the movie Guess Who's Coming for Dinner? I suppose you've seen that.
Yes, with
sometime
Sidney.
in your life.
Yeah, with Sidney Poitier.
And Spencer Tracy.
Yeah.
And just bring that was kind of what the experience was like. It was really different in my house because my parents were always welcoming to my friends, but our maid got very upset that I had a black friend and come to our house.
But that was a long time ago too.
Yeah, it was. I mean, to talk about this with kids and how things have changed just in my lifetime is unbelievable. And it takes time. It took a lot longer than it should have taken, but year by year things have opened up to the black community, and it's really been good for us. We've had several justices on the Supreme Court. Colin Powell was the head of the Armed Forces at one time. We had Secretary of State, President of the United States. There's nothing in this country that can hold someone back from being successful if they want to work. Clarence Thomas, I don't know if you ever read his biography. It's an interesting biography. But he spent the first 6 years, I believe it's for 6 years, it's been a while since I've read it, living in a whorehouse with his mother, he and his brother, until the grandparents took them in and raised them.
Wow.
And got them straightened out. It's amazing what you can do in this country if you're willing to work. Our country is the land of opportunity, and
it is. And here's I want to digress a little bit here because I want to talk about the book Daniel, the Age of Discovery. Do you mind if I read from your press kit?
No. Go ahead.
So, Daniel, the Age of Discovery. Daniel French is a 12-year-old son of the world's wealthiest men, one of the world's wealthiest men. Daniel may be rich in resources, but he is definitely poor in emotional ties with people and practically bankrupt in social skills. Ignored by his parents, mistreated by those employed to take care of him, Daniel has become manipulative and skilled in verbal defense because he was never allowed to associate with people his own age and was never allowed to attend school. He found his friends in books and fine art of the 3-story library tower located on his family's estate. There he became entirely self-educated, and there he developed his passion for learning. So when he went off to school, to Cornwall Academy, a boarding school, he was so inept with people that he immediately became an outcast with everyone except his roommate. Small in body, great in knowledge and intellect, Daniel begins to learn quickly and adapt. His school community helps him to grow, but Daniel has lessons for both his fellow students and teachers. there's a little bit more. So tell me, how can this book help the lives of those readers that may use the book?
Well, I wrote this with that intent in mind, but I also want to challenge the way people think about things that they just take for granted. Something as simple as school. It's convenient for the teachers. It's not convenient for the kids. Just because you're 12 years old, should you be in the 6th grade or 7th grade, right? And that's what we do. So everyone's got to move along at the same pace and do the same work, and they don't even understand that the learning that they're doing is important for them. The grades mean nothing. I mean, kids talk to me about grades that they just mean nothing, and as opposed to the knowledge. The knowledge is everything. The grades are nothing, because when you get out and you get in the real world, no one's going to ask you what grades you made in school, for example. They made it your first job.
They don't either.
But they want to know, can you do it or not? That's what they want to know. And the advantage that you have here, being able to read, that Daniel illustrates so well, is if you can read, you can learn anything. Nothing is beyond your capabilities if you can read. And so Daniel takes advantage of this, and he goes in. He doesn't even know what grades are because he's never been to school. And he goes in that first day of school. He says, "I want harder classes," and the kids will get upset with him. I mean, why would you want harder? You can make easy grades here. You already know this stuff. But he says, "There's no point for my being here if I'm not learning. That's why I'm here, to learn." And he changes the way the way his friends look at school and look at grades. And he changes a lot of things just because this is a new experience to him. And he thinks. And the real people that are in my book, they keep increasing as I get from the sequel has more. They have, I think, 10 people in the sequel, real people. And the third book, I'm only halfway through, so I don't know how many they're going to have there. But the interesting thing about these people, it didn't start out this way. They were either or both self-educated or self-made men. I mean, we talk about. I read a lot of biographies. Jesse Livermore is a character in my book. Now, most people haven't heard of Livermore, but he was perhaps the world's star. In the crash of 1907, he made $3 million. In the crash of 1929, he made $100 million. And he cornered the market twice, and he lost all. He got it back. Declared bankruptcy once, and came back. And even though he didn't have to pay off the people he owed money to, he paid them off with the money again. So for him, it wasn't even the money as much as it was being right and making his decisions on how to invest in the market. But it's pretty interesting. He started in high school, and his father said, "No, you can't go to high school anymore because you need to work on the farm," and he didn't want to do that. And so as a teenager, he ran away from home with his mother's help. She gave him a suit that was a little too large for him and $10, and he ended up in Boston in front of this brokerage house. And he didn't even know anything about brokerage houses. And he finally walked in, and one of the employees there said, "Can I help you?" He said, "I'd like a job." And he got a job writing quotations on the chalkboard. They had a quotation board where they had boys up there writing the current prices down as they came in. And he realized he could read the market, and he started betting at bucket houses, which is a term I guess people today don't know. It's like gambling at the track. You put 10% down the stock price, if it went up.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have to apologize. We had a little technical difficulties. We were talking about Peter's book, and he was giving us some storied examples, of the things that you can accomplish by the simple fact of learning how to read, because then a wealth of knowledge, the world of knowledge, is at your fingertips. And I want to ask you more in depth about the book. I know you have a strength of characters that you're playing off of, and you like historical references as well. In this book, how can people identify with your character and apply it to their own life? Other than the fact that one thing that is kind of clear and resonated with me is how you said this boy, because he was secluded, he didn't develop the social skills that were required or that we are used to historically, and which we are starting to see much today because of the impact of digital media on our American public.
Okay. I think I got that question.
Yeah, that was a little winded. And, I'm just talking about how people can get back to being social with human beings versus this virtuous world that we live in.
Throw away their cell phone. I guess. I mean, this. I say that in half jest, but I will say that I think our kids are losing their ability to communicate face to face, and I see them sitting together and they're communicating by their cell phones instead of talking to one another. They don't learn how to read body language. They're just not reaching out in one-to-one relationships and speaking, and I think it's hurting them.
So what's the remedy for that?
I think what I think is that the cell phone, all this technology that we have, is a great tool. It's amazing what kids know today. They get online, they will search up something. They get a lot of knowledge, but none of it is organized knowledge. It's only organized knowledge through which you make gains. As you know, if you just look at your life, you'll know there are times where you didn't know better and you did stupid things. I did stupid things, and so you don't get that straightened out. But if the kids would put their phones away and use it as a tool to learn things, to look up things, to talk to people, which they do, they text and they talk, but face-to-face is really important. I think it hurts them even in the classroom. Now, I had students, I was teaching speech, and the kids have to come up with impromptu topics, and one of the topics went to one of the seniors, was talk about technology, and he talked about the cell phone. And one of the things he said is that when he and his buddies go out to eat, they put their cell phones in the middle of the table, and the first one to reach for his pays. So, I mean, here's the kid and his friends who actually recognize that they need to have face-to-face conversation. But having a hard time doing that. When I was growing up, we always had family dinners. Even when TV came, we might have missed a dinner, with TV dinners once in a while, but it was always together, and you talked at the dinner table, and if you were a kid, pretty much you listened. I mean, you weren't prohibited from speaking, but you learned a lot by watching the adults in your life and watching them communicate. And I'm very fortunate that I had extremely good communicators in my family, not only with my parents, but my grandparents and my aunts and uncles. And I think one of the earliest memories I have two really early memories, and political memories. One was Harry Truman when he fired MacArthur, and it was on the Lucky Strike cigarette pack. These are from the commercials that had LSMFT on the bottom. The commercial says Lucky Strike means fine tobacco, and Harry Truman was so so unpopular at the time, people said, "Lord save me from Truman," LSMFT. And then the Goldberg trial. My parents and grandparents talked about this for quite some time over dinner. And so I had nothing to add, but I learned, and I learned how to talk as I watched my father, who was very capable of having a good conversation, or my uncle, who was an incredible conversationalist. That's how I learned to talk and be with people. But and it was hard because I was shy anyway. Hard to believe today, but I was. So those things I think help. But sometimes I've got a teenager at home, and sometimes if I really want to talk to him, I will text him, and it comes out when I text him, it comes out neutral, and that sometimes works better.
Yeah, I've had this conversation with my wife, and we're having a conversation, and she said, if we're having a discussion relegated to that may be compounded by emotion, stop. She says, because you can't tell what someone's saying, because you don't have those physical cues that you use normally to gauge how the conversation is going. And I think that's so important nowadays, because it's not only just the phones, but it's email, and it's all non-personal communication that are causing us to be a little, I call it Forrest Gumpy, but he was actually pretty nice.
We when we first started using email, it didn't take me long to discover that it was ineffective, because I would write something, and to me it's clear, but it gets to the parents and it wasn't clear, and they'd write me back, and we had this conversation, which if I talked to them face-to-face or on the phone, I'd clear it up in about 10 seconds. It just complicates things. So I started telling parents not to I said, you can contact me by email, but if you want to answer, you're better off calling me, talking to me in person. I'd give them my home phone number, and they never took advantage of it. It was all right, but you can't even read it. Sometimes it sounds like this person's angry, and they're not angry at all in their texting.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
So it creates more confusion than the ability to sit down and talk face-to-face with somebody.
When you wrote this book, and we talked yesterday, how many books do you have in the works?
Right? I have two that are coming out probably within the month. One is called Thoughts to Hold On To, which is an expanded edition of a book I wrote about 25 years ago. It's designed for teenagers, and it arose out of conversations I had with teenagers. And I have expanded it, so it's about double the size. It's not very long, and each page has one thought in it. Help kids with whatever they're dealing with. Like I have one in front of me now. I opened randomly. There's a page on money. There's a page on dealing with negatives. There's a page on prejudice and popularity and anger, and when your world's out of whack, and when you're punished unjustly. It talks about a lot of things. Now, I have used it. The copy I had, I did a short run, and I used it for in school. When I see kids that come in, they'd have a problem. I could tell they had a problem. I would give them a copy, and there was two conditions that they would read it. And second is that they wouldn't tell other people that I gave them the book, to other kids, so cause they didn't want kids coming in saying, "You gave so-and-so a book, can I get one too?" But I've done that, and it's been effective. It's opened up a dialogue with the kids. As I told you on the phone yesterday, I gave one out last spring to a boy. I think he was a junior, and I knew there was something wrong. I didn't know what it was. I still don't know what it was. And I gave it to him, and he had it for about a week. And he came in one day, and just gave me a hug and said thank you. So whatever it was bothering him, it helped him. So that's the idea. I'm trying to get the kids things and ideas that will get them grounded, so they have something to believe in. I think that's really important. I don't think kids have much to believe in today because of the different messages they get, and most, half the country's not even going to church anymore, or believing in God anymore. I'm not saying that's good or bad, but I think it's good to have faith in God because there's someone else bigger than you.
And it gave you a sense of community as well.
Yes. So those things are, I think, are important. So what I'm really trying to provide some guidance in my book. I'm trying to challenge him. We do things like I told you, talking about school. We do things because we've always done them that way. But even this situation, I taught 50 years, and if I were back in the classroom teaching regularly, I wouldn't teach like I taught 50 years ago.
You say you would not teach the same way?
No, I would not. I'd change it because the technology has changed the world. If they're going to go home and do homework and the answers are online, it doesn't do them any good. And I think that if they're grade focused instead of learning focused, that's a pretty serious complication.
Yeah,
I'll tell you a short story. Here's a story I had. I think I told you this yesterday, but I had a kid come to me. It's a kid I've known for a long time. He was one of my students, and he said, "Will you help me get my life squared away?" Because he was in some trouble. And I said, "Sure, I'll do that." And he picked up the back of my book and was reading the back of it. And he said to me, "What does this word mean?" And I told him, and they said, "What does this word mean?" And I said, "Why don't you know these words? You just graduated from high school. This kid wants to be a writer." And I said, "You just graduated from high school?" He said, "Why cheated?" I said, "It looks to me like you cheated yourself because you want to write and you don't have any vocabulary." So if the grades are really important, the kids feel they are, and the parents feel they are, and I think schools feel they are, then where's the learning? It's not there.
Yeah, one of my biggest problems with school, in retrospect, was there was no objective. There literally was no objective. It wasn't until I exited my secondary education at about the age of 22, and I had to get a job that I had to figure out the information that I was given, and then I had to figure out how to apply it. And I just think about how far I would have been if they would have said, "Okay, here's an objective, and here's why you're going to learn A, B, C, and D, so that you can end up at this point and have a result." That's what I want to say. And I don't know if it's changed.
Well, I think there's 4 reasons to go to school. I call them my pillars of education. First is to acquire knowledge, and these aren't necessarily in order. The second is to learn how to learn. The third is to be able to communicate well in an oral and written manner. And the fourth is to have character, because I think character is the hallmark of an educated person. And I'll tell you, recently, I don't care what your politics are. It doesn't make any difference to me. I have liberal friends, I have conservative friends. But what bothers me is I look out at what's going on in our country today, the anger that people are displaying towards people who don't agree with them, and the rioting with burning cars and breaking windows and things like that. A lot of these people have high school diplomas and college degrees, but in my opinion, they're not educated because it shows a lack of character to behave in this way, to be disrespectful of other people who don't agree with you is a real problem. It's gotten worse over the last 15, 20 years. And if you are educated, your character will help you to be respectful to other people.
And
that's what I think.
And that's
is the hallmark.
That's a great statement. We're coming to the end of the podcast here, and Peter, I want to really thank you for being available and being on the Billionaire Lifestyle podcast.
Well, I'm glad to do it. I hope it turned out well.
Oh, it will. It will. Don't worry about that. Where can people find your book?
Anywhere where books are sold online. So if you go to Barnes & Noble online, or I buy books in Amazon, Friesen Press, my publisher, you can find them online. It comes in hardback, paperback, and electronic.
Can they get them directly from you as well?
No, I can't do that. No, Friesen Press is my publisher.
Okay.
Has 35,000 outlets.
Okay, very good.
And if I sell them direct, then I may have other obligations that I don't want to have to deal with.
Understood. Well, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. This has been the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast. Please go to emmettmuckles.com. You can also go to Peter's website for more information. That is www.peterpactor.net, and that's PETERPACTOR.net. Thank you so much, Peter.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been fun. I hope we'll talk again.
Oh, I'm certain we will, because you got more books coming out. Ladies and gentlemen, there is one thing that I always say. Make sure that you know this. You are a 1 in a billion or more special creature. In that statement alone, you are already a billionaire, because you share a collective with billions like you, but you are so unique, like a star in the sky. You must recognize that. And the way you recognize that is tomorrow or tonight when you wake up, you go in the bathroom, you take your shower, and you have to look in the mirror, look in those eyes, because those eyes are so unique. There's never been another like them, exactly like them, which lets you know that you are special. Revel in the fact that you have what you have. You have a nose, you have an eye, you have eyes, you have those wrinkles, you have those moles that makes you you. That means you are special, and someone else thinks you're special, even if you don't believe it. Your job is to find out what your passion and what resonates with your heart, what resonates with your soul, and what resonates with your mind, which is the Trinity of you. With that, take that information, take it to heart, and live the billionaire lifestyle. Thanks, Peter.
You're welcome.
Have an awesome day.